here we are, the MLB Strategy Show. It is Thursday, August 27th. We have a 6-game slate on our hands for today. It is 6 games visibly on FanDuel. It is 7 games visibly on DraftKings, but make no mistake, I promise you, only 6 of those games are going to count. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer. We are brought to you by Yahoo Sports, and we are Awesemo.com. Adam, what's going on this lovely Thursday?
A lot of weird shit, but no, I'm actually happy now because I just realized that Golf Lock will be after this show. So I thought I was going to be making my golf lineups while talking about baseball, but I can just wait on my golf lineups.
Yeah, Golf Lock is at 12:30, I believe.
12:30 or 12:35, yeah.
Yeah, my golf lineups are already in. When you're good, you're good.
Yeah, I wasn't planning on playing, and then I woke up, at 9:30 and saw that it hadn't locked yet, and I was like, yeah, I guess I'll play.
Yeah, it's looking like we're not going to have a basketball slate today. So, we're going to have some time this morning. Got to say it right now, out of the gate, I have no idea what's going to happen with the rest of this MLB slate. We could lose individual players throughout the day. We could lose games throughout the day. We could lose the slate throughout the day. I have no idea. You guys know as much as I do at this point. Adam and I are going to go through all 6 games. If I see certain people in a lineup, I'm not going to speculate. I'm just going to assume that they're in until they're not. That's all we can do right now. There's no other direction to take this.
Yep.
Or it's going to be a really long and useless show. An even more long and even more useless show than it normally is. Did you play baseball yesterday?
Yeah.
Anything good?
Yeah, I like 1.5x.
Oh, okay.
Plus a couple thousand.
Better than a 0x.
Yeah, plus a couple thousand, which given how my last 10 days have gone, feels like I've made $1 million.
Let's see. Oh, okay. We're updated on lineup study. So I'm going to take a quick look at the big contest from yesterday on DK, which was the gyro ball, 100K to first. Weird. $100,000 up top. I don't see Awesemo listed as the winner. I'm not sure if there's a glitch in the reporting data here or not. Winning lineup 193.25. You needed Jake DeGrom, John Gray, a 4-man Rocky stack, Arenado, Story, Blackman, Sam Hilliard, a 3-man Tiger stack, Austin Romine, Miguel Cabrera, Jonathan Scope, and a one-off Dylan Carlson.
How much money did that
do? $1,300.
Yeah. I mean, lineups were just really weird yesterday because you got stuck. Basically, like you had the Sonny Gray game get postponed before lock. You had the Lamet game, I think, right around lock. But then you had Kershaw. You lost Kershaw and Gossman after lock, and you basically just had no pitching to go to if you were late swapping. It ended up salary-wise being really weird.
Yeah, 48.7 was the salary that got it done last night. Decent game out of DeGrom.
Yeah.
7 innings, 2 hits, 14 strikeouts. Whew.
Gave up a run, though. The guy's really falling off.
I know. What a joke. What a joke. All right, from a stack perspective yesterday, let's go ahead and see what you needed. Sort, order, take out the pitcher. Highest scoring stack, the Colorado Rockies. Second highest scoring stack, the Detroit Tigers. No surprises there. Chalk stack of the day looks like it was the Cardinals. They were fine. Actually, all the chalk looked like it did decent except for the Oakland A's. Fair enough. Any takeaways from yesterday's slate? Anything interesting?
I thought it was kind of interesting, again, just from the late swap dynamic, because if you because of what was left after players were ruled out and games were canceled, everyone was clearly going to Robbie Ray, who we know is really, really volatile. And so I was kind of surprised that more people didn't take the approach I did in my. So I played 4 lineups yesterday. I had Ray in 3 of them, but in my main lineup, I just stacked the Rockies and Colby Allard at the same price as Robbie Ray and hoped for the best.
Sure,
he did fine. He did almost as well as Ray, but it was kind of surprising to me that the Rockies were as relatively low owned as they were, given that you had a relatively not good pitcher at a ton of ownership coming in against them, and everyone knew it at that point.
Yeah, Robbie Ray finished that contest 32.4% owned.
Yeah.
Jake DeGrom, 53.
Colby Allard, 2.
Colby Allard, 2.6.
I think he was in the 254 max. He was 4%.
Well, guys, I see 166 of you in here. Go ahead, hit that thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when this and all of our other content goes live. We'll have MLB Live Before Lock coming up later today. Don't get the sense we're going to have an NBA Live Before Lock today, but, if we find out we're going to have basketball games, we will have that show.
I think they've been canceled, haven't they?
Nothing official yet.
I thought Stephen A. Smith said they weren't playing.
Well, Stephen A. Smith says a lot of ridiculous shit that we should just ignore, so I'm going to go ahead and skip that one for right now. Look, the two people we care most about in this scenario, Woj or Shams, have not reported that. So as far as I'm concerned, it didn't happen in the NBA quite yet. We do have the MMA Live Before Lock tonight at 7:30. That will be Pete the Heat Rogers and Jason Floyd. They'll be breaking down this Saturday's UFC card, so tune into that one for sure. Definitely tune into it because they have the second best producer in the business. We got the best one right now in Jordan Klein. Second best one is, me. So that'll be me on the MMA show tonight. Jordan, I assume you're laughing. I can't see you right now. Yep, there you are. I minimized the window, so I only see Adam underneath my camera. I try to look into the camera as much as possible instead of just staring at a spreadsheet like the nerd that I am, but I mostly just stare at the spreadsheet. Adam, we got 6 games. Are you ready to dive in?
Yep.
Let's do this. Let's see. Did we get a line yet on the Mets game? No. I assume we don't even have an official starter yet, but we'll do that later. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Raiders. I see. This is just, I'm out, man. I'm out.
Yeah, Lofty hit on the 49ers last night. Talk about the Kershaw game.
Rangers and A's. 4-run implied total for the Rangers, 5.5 for the A's. So big time favorites. Jordan Lyles going up against Chris Bassett. Lyles not really getting any love. Bassett, on the other hand, 8,600 on DK, 37% owned. He's 7,800 on FanDuel and 18% owned. How does Bassett look to you?
I think he looks good. I think pretty much anybody that breathes and faces the Rangers look good. Mike Fiers had, I think, 6 or 7 strikeouts last night, which is a huge accomplishment for him. And now you get Bassett, who's actually a pretty solid pitcher. So pretty good price point on him. Comes into the game with a 25.5% strikeout percentage against lefties this year, 15.8% against righties. Throwing his changeup 23% to lefties, not getting a ton of swings and misses, but the strikeouts have been there, in general. And going back to last year, a 26% strikeout percentage to lefties, 19% to righties. Most of the hitters in the Texas lineup that you would have any concern about are left-handed. Plenty of strikeouts in there with Joey Gallo, Rougned Odor. Chu strikes out a lot. Santana strikes out. Frazier strikes out. Just a good spot and a very reasonable price point on Bassett.
I'm surprised he's getting as much ownership as he is. But then again, maybe this is just my expectation of how deep some of these guys go in the game. Like, to me, there's this group of 3 on DraftKings of Bassett, Boyd, and Yarborough that we have all mid to high 30s in ownership. I think Boyd is just on a completely different level than those 3 guys. Am I looking at that incorrectly?
I think the spot for Boyd is clearly the worst.
Sure. I'm surprised to see all 3 of them have similar ownership, though.
I don't know. I'm not, because people just play pitchers against Texas blindly at this point. Boyd hasn't been very good this year, and he's facing the Twins. And then people, to some extent, also play pitchers blindly against the Orioles.
That's fair. That's going to be one I'm going to have to dig into, so. Any Lyles for you? 7,700, 4% owned?
I hope not. I had 30% last time, though, so I don't know. But I don't think he's good. I think that, with it being a 6-game slate and him not getting ownership against an Oakland team that does strike out plenty, that would be the case for him. But I don't think I end up getting there. Obviously, a lot of power for Oakland. Lyles so far this year has been getting absolutely lit up by right-handed power in particular, a 300 expected ISO so far. Going back to last year, 194. But this year, just not getting swings and misses against right-handed bats. Only a 5.5% swinging strike percentage. 300 expected ISO, as I mentioned, 370 actual ISO, and now gets to go up against Semien, Chapman, Canha, Piscotty, Matt Olson from the left side, Laureano. I mean, it's such a high upside Oakland stack. I think they would have to be getting a lot of ownership for me to start looking at Lyles potentially.
All right, so let's hit on the hitting here. We'll start on the Ranger side. Not really getting any ownership. Rougned Odor is at 8%. Joey Gallo on FanDuel at 13. Those are the highest numbers on both sites. I have the Rangers either 9th or 10th out of 12 today. I don't see them as a particularly great value. I don't imagine I would have much. I don't mind Chu in the leadoff spot, especially if Bassett's getting some ownership. So like using Chu in a non-Bassett lineup works for me, but I don't get the sense that I would have a lot of exposure to the Rangers. Do you? No,
same boat for me. You can always talk me into Joey Gallo. And I think it's worth mentioning that you potentially have a catcher batting third for Texas and Jose Trevino. Not that he's an exciting play, but just getting a cheap catcher at the top of a lineup has some value. But other than that, kind of Bassett would have to pick up significant ownership for Texas to start popping for me, just because I do think Bassett is a pretty solid pitcher, and I think Texas is pretty bad.
Speaking of things that are popping, the Oakland A's bats in this game, 5.5 run implied total looks good. The park looks good. And then the ownership is there. Heavy ownership on FanDuel, 19% of the full 100. So that's a pretty large number. 12% aggregate ownership on DK, Semien, Chapman, Marcana, Piscotty, all in double digits. We've got a couple of those guys in the 20s and 30s on FanDuel. To me, they're my number 2 overall. But they're my number 4 from a value perspective on DK. I feel like they're going a hair over-owned. How are you going to approach Oakland given their ownership?
So right now on DK, I think it looks fine to me. You have about 12% aggregate ownership going there according to the top stack tool, but with it only being a 6-game slate, effectively, that's not as big a deal as, like we talked about yesterday on what we thought was going to be a 9 or a 10 gamer, where, it's kind of like when these teams get to huge ownership, even if it's a really good spot, you can get away. They're projected to be the 4th highest owned team on DraftKings. You have a ton of ownership going to Toronto, Minnesota, and Washington as well. I mentioned that Lyles has just been absolute trash this year, getting lit up. Oakland has so much power. Plus, if, whatever recency bias you want to factor in, Oakland was really popular last night and was really ineffective against Allard. So, maybe that drops ownership a little bit too. I think I like Oakland if the ownership holds how it is, because, they're getting it, but it's at a point, it's low enough that you can make a pivot or two either within your Oakland stack, looking at individual ownerships, or, at pitcher or with your secondary stack or whatever. It's not going to be that hard to be unique in an Oakland stack, at least how it looks right now.
Yeah. I mean, if this lineup happens the way that I see it, not, even just simply switching from Piscotty to Grossman, dropping from 19% to 4% is going to be enough to keep you relatively unique.
Right.
Like I said, they rank as my number 2 stack. And that's like number 2 with a bullet too. I think the Twins and the A's are pretty high up here. And then there's a pretty big drop off, all things considered. So yeah. I have no problem getting to Oakland.
There's a couple of things that I always like about Oakland stacks too. You mentioned one of them in that, well, you kind of mentioned, just the ownership difference between players, but in general, Oakland has so many power hitters in their lineup. They're not one of these teams where, if you're not stacking, like if you don't have like the 2, 3, and 4 hitter, you're sacrificing a power. Obviously their 2, 3, 4 hitters are all good, but like there's power throughout the lineup. So you can be contrarian within the stack without sacrificing a ton of upside. But also Sean Murphy catching, obviously it's tough to get catchers that have upside, but Sean Murphy projects for a 186 ISO from Steamer. Last year at AAA, 317 ISO in the PCL, which obviously, you take with a grain of salt, but he's someone that projects to have some power, especially for a catcher. So not only can you differentiate within your Oakland stacks without sacrificing too much, but you also can cover the catcher position with a guy that actually can hit a bit.
So there was a message in chat that said, I lost it now. Can you guys comment on the fact that your sponsor Yahoo doesn't have an MLB slate yet? Ultimately then followed up not too long after with, clearly these guys don't play Yahoo, so they don't care. If they don't have a slate, they don't have a slate, man. We don't work for them. I don't have any other. You have the same information I do. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that it doesn't exist because the sports world melted down last night. Apologies for Yahoo not having a slate. I don't control that in any way, shape, or form. Wish I could. I'd create a bunch of slates for myself at like really weird times and really weird sports that no one else would play. Anyway, favorite bat from Oakland?
Chapman, assuming he's back in the lineup.
Yeah, you and me both there. 24% owned already, 5,400 on DraftKings. Favorite bat from the Rangers, if you had to take one?
Always Gallo. I think the most, or at least potentially, depending on how the lineup looks, so the most, like, the highest utility bat would be Trevino, if he's at the top of the order.
I like Chu if he's leading off. If he's
actually, that's a really good price point on Chu. I missed that.
3,500 in the leadoff spot, and you get the lefty righty matchup.
Yeah.
It's not bad. Let's move it on to let's try typing first. Blue Jays and Red Sox. 5.7 run implied total for the Jays. 4-4 for the Red Sox. It's Ryu and Chris Mazza. Ryu getting 10% ownership, 9,700. No ownership going to Mazza. Do you want to pivot down from Scherzer to Ryu? I don't like this. And I don't know what a Chris Mazza is, but he doesn't appear to be all that interesting.
Yeah, he doesn't. I was just pulling up his FanGraphs page. Mazza's thrown 5 2/3 so far this year. Pitched 16 1/3 in the majors last year, all as a reliever. At AAA last year, struck out 7.3 hitters per 9. Doesn't seem overly appealing. Doesn't seem like anybody that really matters for DFS other than getting to some Blue Jays bats. But as far as Ryu goes, I think it's a really tough sell to pivot there from Scherzer, just because obviously you do get so much strikeout upside with Scherzer. Ryu is a good pitcher, of course, but so far this year at 26.8% strikeout percentage for Ryu, 32.1% for Scherzer. I think if I'm paying up, I would prefer to just get Scherzer.
Yeah, I'm really surprised to see him at 9,700. That just doesn't seem like the correct price.
I think it does, more or less. Like in the terms of like, if Ryu were 9K, he would deservedly be massive chalk.
So, all right, here's a question for you. I hope I can ask this question to you right now. How do you have Ryu projected relative to Chris Bassett and Matt Boyd?
You can't, but
okay.
I mean, just off the top of my head, I think that I would have him ahead of Boyd. And okay. Oh, you said the other one was Bassett?
Yeah.
In terms of points, ahead of both, I think. But
okay.
Salary wise, I think it becomes a lot closer.
I have him behind both of those guys in points, so that's where I was going for.
I'm looking now to see what Alex says.
That's a good point. We could look at our MLB projections on Awesemo.com. These are things that we have, everybody. You can check that sort of stuff out. You can even check out the MLB top pitchers report for today. Alex's odds of being a top scoring pitcher on the slate. That is free today if you want to check it out. So I highly recommend doing that. He has Ryu behind both of Bassett and Boyd. Man, when you're good, you're good. I disagree. Well, 2 against 1. 2 against 1. And the two smarter people against 1, too. I would gladly take a even odds bet that Ryu outscores Matt Boyd today. I got to dig into it. It's too early in the morning. Anyway, so I'm assuming you think that Ryu should be owned more than 10%. Probably, but also it comes down to roster construction. Like I said, I would rather, if I'm paying up, I'd just rather get to Scherzer, although at 57 or almost 60% compared to 10%, that's, I think, too big of a gap. Yeah, I mean, looking at what we're missing, like half of the pitchers, I think. Where? In the ownership projection. Wow. That makes... Are we? Yeah, we're missing 5 pitchers. 1, 2, 3. They all total 200% for me. Just count the pitchers. Right, but like the ownership totals out, and the guys that aren't getting the ownership I guess are like, it makes sense to me. So the totals look right. Who's not there? I mean, I don't like look at it like that.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Like, I'm not surprised that Randy Dobnak is not showing up with ownership, and I'm not surprised that all of the other ownership is going to the people that it's going to.
No, but Randy Dobnak is showing up with ownership.
Okay, I have no idea who. Like, I don't know who's listed and who's not. I just pasted it in, and it just shows up in my table. It doesn't show up as a blank to me.
Yeah. Also, I'm an idiot. I think I just had a filter set wrong because I just refreshed the page and so that's what it was. I had starting pitcher check instead of relief pitcher.
Okay. Yeah, I assumed that I was going to end up right in this scenario.
Unlike the Boyd and Ryu scenario. Yeah, okay. So I'm just an idiot and don't know how to read things.
Heard it here first, guys.
Yeah, so Ryu at 10% I think is too low.
Okay. Let's talk Blue Jays bats. They are getting quite a bit of love. I have them as my 5th favorite stack, 6th from a value perspective. I haven't pulled up the top stacks tool yet, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say they are projected to be over-owned. How do you feel about the Blue Jays?
I mean, I like the spot. It's kind of like we talked about with teams like the Cubs and the Tigers and the Cardinals yesterday. Like it's a good spot, but the ownership is just kind of out of control. 17.5% aggregate ownership on DraftKings. They have the second highest top stack percentage behind Oakland. So it's, they're a good stack. They have the top value percentage. They have the second highest top stack percentage. All that's great, but you're just getting 20% almost 20% of the field going there. If you're playing these 40,000 person, 33% of the prize pool to first tournaments. Even if you roster them and they are the highest scoring stack, like congratulations, you're still competing with 10 to 15,000 people that stack this team.
Yeah, I mean, Biggio, Grichuk, Travis Shaw, and Tellez all north of 20% right now. Again, I like having pieces of this team. They clearly grade out really well. 5.7 run implied total is going to do that. Chris Mazza is going to do that. You might need to get a little bit more creative in a large field GPP. Do you have a favorite Blue Jays bat?
I'll say I think I'd be more likely to just grab one-offs, hope that you get a home run from them, but that the stack as a whole fails, because then that a large percentage of the field is taking those zeros or threes or whatever the rest of the stack does. Biggio obviously stands out, but he is actually expensive. Travis Shaw probably are projected to bat third, really inexpensive at 3,600 on DraftKings with multi-position eligibility. Looks really good. Rowdy Tellez, sub 3K, also a pretty strong value.
Yeah, it's tricky. Shaw with first, third at 3,600 is, I think, the clear best play here. Probably the best cash option coming out of it, 27% owned. But man, that's really scary at that ownership. I feel like I'd be most likely to get to someone like Teoscar, who's getting him a little bit of the ownership discount here. But if I'm doing a one-off, it's probably coming to Travis Shaw. That seems like the best spot for it. Red Sox side, I kind of like them. They're relatively neutral on the top stack odds, but they're pretty efficient to get to. They're not, well, some of these guys aren't all that expensive. JD is priced like he should be. Actually, he's probably cheap. Do you get to Boston against Ryu?
I don't think so. I mean, I think Ryu's a really good pitcher. So far this year, 29.4% strikeout percentage against righties, 119 expected ISO allowed on 432 pitches. Going back to last year, a 124 expected ISO, 23.2% strikeout percentage to righties. I don't know. I'm just way more interested in Ryu than the Red Sox.
I kind of like that heart of the order of Boston, that Devers, JD, Bogarts trio. The only guys that are like real MLB players left in the Red Sox lineup. Verdugo not getting much love, but I don't think he grades out all that well. If they were getting a little bit less ownership, I think I might be interested. But since they're pretty neutral right now, it's hard to see it. Like, Minnesota and Boston have similar top value odds, but Minnesota is just so much more likely to be the top stack of the day that it gets kind of difficult to do it. I don't know. Favorite Red Sox bat? JD?
Yeah, pretty much always.
Yeah.
Bogarts probably is more valuable, though, because he's a little bit cheaper and because of the position.
3K Kevin Pillar, if he's leading off, righty lefty, it's really gross. He's not good, but there's a case to be made. Ownership's already there, so it kind of sucks. All right, one more. We'll take a little bit of a break. Nats and Phillies. 5.2 run implied total for the Nats, 3.9 for the Phils, 62% chance to win for Washington. Max Scherzer going for Washington, Spencer Howard going for the Phils. 39% owned on FanDuel, 58% owned on DraftKings. That would be Max Scherzer. Any part of that surprising?
Nope.
Yeah. I mean, if you got 100, would you even bat an eye?
No. I mean, like I said, I think the 6-1. Like if you give me 6-1 odds on Scherzer versus Ryu, I take Ryu. But I would have no issue getting with however much Scherzer I get.
Yeah, he is the best pitcher on the slate, and it is not close. I don't think you're taking a even odds bet on Scherzer versus anyone else here. So
nope.
There's nothing to look into to me. Like, you're clearly putting Max Scherzer into your lineup in a cash game first, and you're not slowing down at that point. I don't really care about the GPP ownership. Like, he's just on a different level. Max Scherzer it is for me. Any Spencer Howard, 6% owned on DraftKings.
It's kind of interesting. I don't know how necessary he'll be with how cheap some of the hitters are. Washington, obviously, a pretty formidable offense, not a ton of strikeouts now that you have, with Kendrick and Suzuki and Turner and Eaton. So it's not like it's a good spot. Howard's been pretty hit or miss so far this year. One of Philly's top pitching prospects, though, coming off of a 67 pitch start, had 5 strikeouts in 3 2/3. I think there's a better cheap pitcher on this slate, though.
Which we will get to, I'm assuming.
It's not Chris Mazza.
Sixto?
Yeah.
We shall get there. Let's take a look at Nats bats. They are getting quite a bit of ownership. They are the 3rd most owned team on DraftKings, 4th highest top stack odds, but just eyeballing it, it looks like they are the most over-owned team on the slate. How do you feel about the Nats?
Yeah, I mean, getting a lot of ownership, I don't really want to get there. They're a decent offense, but, like you said, 13.9% top stack percent or ownership percentage, 9.1% top stack percentage. Basically, the way the top of these teams look now, I would just rather be getting to Oakland. And then, like, if Matt Boyd's going to pick up ownership, I'd like to get to Minnesota. Assuming the thing is, like, if you have Washington being over-owned by the field and also Spencer Howard not getting ownership, it's just tough for me to prioritize the Nats.
I feel the same way. Like, I have them 6th. I have them as the 8th best value, and that's significantly lower than where their ownership is. I think the Nats would be the easiest place for me to fade pretty aggressively. Just looking at the structure of it all, I would imagine I would be well below the field on the Nats and have essentially only individual bats coming out of it. A one-off Trey Turner, a one-off Adam Eaton. That's it for me, though. I don't want to be there in stacks.
So far, in his extremely limited sample, Howard has had much more issues with lefties than righties, kind of as you would expect. But he's only struck out 10% of lefties so far. He's allowed a 203 expected ISO to them. So I think Soto, as usual, stands out.
On the Philly side, not all that much ownership coming in. Harper at 18% on FanDuel, Real Muto at 13% on DK. They're the only 2 guys that are in double digits on either site. I have them as my number 4 stack. Their ownership is nowhere near that number. They are
Phillies?
Yes.
You have the team facing Max Scherzer as your number 4 stack?
Relative to salary.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. If I didn't say that, my bad. No,
really confused.
No. Relative to salary. McCutchen and Hoskins hitting 1-2 at 3,200 and 3,600 is just like, you don't see guys with that sort of hitting profile have that potential for plate appearances. So that pushes them up from a value perspective. Is there any chance you would want to go to any Phillies bats? We could see some home runs coming out of Scherzer. There's certainly a lot of ownership there. I can't imagine you want to stack against him.
It's not a team that I would want to get a lot of. With it being a 6-game slate, it obviously does drive up the raw ownership on Scherzer. If this were a 10-game slate, not only do you have more teams that the Phillies have to beat, but you also just naturally are going to have lower ownership on Scherzer than you do on a 6-gamer. So there is at least some merit there. One of the problems, though, is like you're saving the money by going to the Phillies, but you're taking Scherzer off the board. So what are you saving the money for? It's clearly just a large field tournament play if you're going to do it.
Yeah, we're on the same page there. There's no. You're playing checkers instead of chess. I think if you're trying to go to the Phillies instead of to fade Max Scherzer in this spot, it could very well work out. But Max Scherzer could also just be pedestrian, and the Phillies aren't very good too. There's that. For him to get full on lit up, I'll take my chances. Do you have a Phillies bat that you'd be cool with having? I'm assuming Harper.
Yeah, I mean Harper is the one that profiles the best. You mentioned the price tags on Segura and on McCutchen and Hoskins being favorable.
I see this game outside of Scherzer is just largely a stay away.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at with ownership how it is right now.
All righty. Guys, Yahoo Sports is the presenting sponsor of this show. They've got CSV uploads and CSV edits now, which is great. You can get $30 in YSRPs, Yahoo Sports Rewards points, if you sign up and use the promo code Awesemo. They've got a lot of smaller contests, they do a lot of 10 max entry, which I think is really beneficial to someone that's a relatively new player. I would expect you see softer competition as well. To me, this strikes me as a place where it's great to build your bankroll. And I recommend checking it out. The biggest appeal of all, they have lower management fee contests and daily no management fee contests. When you don't have to pay any sort of fee on the back end, that is massive for you in the long run. You're keeping that money in your account. You're keeping that money in your pocket. There's no better place to do that than Yahoo. So use that promo code Awesemo. Get yourself up to $30 in YSRPs. Make better choices. Choose Yahoo Daily Fantasy. Let's move it to the Rays and the Orioles. 4.9 run implied total for the Rays, 3.6 for the Orioles. Ryan Yarbrough, John Means. Yarbrough, 39% owned at 7,900. John Means, no ownership at 6,100. Talk to me about your boy Means.
Not stretched out enough for me to roster.
I wasn't serious. Talk to me about Yarbrough.
Pretty nice price point for Yarbrough coming off of, I believe, 94 pitches his last time out. 97 pitches his last time out. Went 6 1/3 against Toronto. That was the most pitches he's thrown this year. Prior to that, he hadn't thrown more than 87, which came in his second start of the season. So he really hasn't been getting deep in the games, which is concerning, especially when you talk about how Tampa Bay's used Yarbrough in the past. But they did say coming into the season that they were going to use him as a starter. He, like I said, is coming off of a long outing against Toronto last time out. The Orioles offense really, I don't think is bad. It's obviously not great, but it is very right-handed heavy. It does have some solid hitters in it. They added Ryan Mountcastle, who is their top hitting prospect. So it's a good spot for Yarbrough. I don't want to go overboard and say that it's, phenomenal or anything.
I think the implied run total is going to carry a lot of weight for him today. 3.6, the lowest on the slate.
Strikeouts really haven't been there for him this year either, which is concerning.
Yeah, I see this is where I'm going with this. I have Boyd as such a better play than Yarbrough at the exact same amount of ownership. Where does Alex have these guys in the top pitchers tool?
He has them projected. He has Yarbrough 2+ points behind Boyd and
28% chance of being the top 2 pitcher on DK for Boyd, 19.8% on Yarbrough. Boyd with a better chance of being a top 2 value as well. So that makes me feel pretty good. It's kind of making me feel like I have Chris Bassett under projected. I don't get the love for Yarbrough. I think he'd be the guy that loses the most ownership out of everybody we're projecting. I think I'd be more likely to be heavier on Boyd and Bassett and not Yarbrough.
So Bassett, out of the 3 guys, Bassett's my favorite.
Okay.
Yarbrough and Boyd, I think, are close. I just hate the spot for Boyd.
Okay. I was going to say, you used to be such a Boyd truther.
Yeah, I'm also a Minnesota Bats truther.
That's also, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, no one wanted Matt Boyd to get traded to a quality pitching coach more than you last season.
Yeah.
Okay.
Advocating for being willing to trade Jordan Alvarez for Matt Boyd's one of the worst takes I've ever had.
Maybe not.
Yeah, if Alvarez ever comes back.
Let's talk Rays bats. They are getting 0 ownership against John Means. I have them as my 7th stack. I feel like they need to get a little bit more ownership just given the slate size.
Yeah, I don't really understand why they aren't. I think that Means is okay. I think he is throwing harder this year. He's always had a good changeup. He's had some issues with it as far as command this year and getting a feel for it. But I've always said that I don't think Means is as bad as people tend to assume because basically he pitches for the Orioles. But he's also not a pitcher that I'm shying away from at low ownership when I can get all the right-handed power in this lineup. Hunter Renfroe in particular stands out. But Mike Brosseau, Willie Adames, Jose Martinez, these guys all have power. Zanino is a cheap catcher option that has a ton of power. So, I think that especially if they're not getting ownership, I like Tampa.
I assume this ownership comes up just because this looks so preposterous, but they're the best play of the day relative to ownership at this point.
And you're also just not getting Means going deep into the game. I'm not sure off the top of my head how Baltimore's bullpen looks as far as who's available, but how their good arms look. But you're not getting a ton of innings from the starter here.
I mean, it's a weird thing because I would want to get a ton of innings out of Means, but to get a ton of innings out of Means, it also probably means he's playing well. So, I think it'd be a great thing to get 6 innings out of Means, but that if he throws 6 innings, he didn't get bombed.
That's I mean, typically going up against relievers isn't as favorable as going up against the starter these days. Yeah. But the point just being Baltimore's bullpen has a few good arms, but overall is lacking. They did use 5 relievers yesterday. Tanner Scott, Michael Givens, Paul Fry, all threw at least 20 pitches. Castro threw 17. If you look at the guys that are likely available today, Sean Armstrong is the only one that's really any good. And he's a back end guy. So you're probably looking at Dylan Tate or possibly Jorge Lopez, but he pitched on Tuesday as being the guy that comes in after Means. Mm-hmm. I'm not scared of taking bats against either of those guys.
Who's your favorite Rays bat?
Renfroe.
Yeah, we are on the same page there. I like Mike Brosseau on FanDuel more than I do on DraftKings. On DraftKings, he's $4,700, $900 more expensive than Renfroe. On FanDuel, he's $2,500, $400 cheaper than Renfroe. So give me Brosseau on FanDuel. Do you get any Orioles bats against Yarbrough? Because I think Yarborough's ownership is too high. This seems like a decent hedge as well, although, I don't think they're good.
No, I do think that, at least the way it looks right now, I would probably have Yarbrough as one of, if not the most over-owned pitchers. So that would bump Baltimore up for me, because the way I look at it isn't just, I'm not necessarily just looking to stack against the highest owned pitchers. I look to stack against what I project as the most over-owned, and I think Yarbrough will end up being in that category. So I am interested in Baltimore. You do get some pretty cheap bats. Like Ryan Mountcastle should not be $2,200. Pat Valleca's $2,400. Santander obviously is hitting great this year. Pedro Severino has been one of the best hitting catchers in baseball. I think that Baltimore, if they're not going to get ownership, looks like a pretty good value. And I mean, obviously would let you get to like Scherzer, Ryu or something.
Yeah, I like it a lot. This is a very, very good game to target everything but Yarbrough.
I really don't understand how Ryan Mountcastle is $2,200.
Is he just recently up?
Like last week, I think.
Okay, so it's not like this is.
He's played 5 games.
It's not his first salary.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, Steamer projects him for a 197 ISO. He has actually looked really good plate discipline wise. The biggest knock on him the biggest knock offensively, as a prospect was his discipline. He walked 4.3% of the time at AAA last year. But so far this year in the majors, through his 5 games, he's a 20% walk percentage. But even just watching the games, the plate disciplines looked really, really good. But, like I said, the power's there. He's going to get, he's not a pinch hit risk. I don't really know why he's so cheap.
I am going to like this game tonight. I hope the ownership stays where it is. Favorite Orioles bet? Did I ask you?
No, but it's Mountcastle.
Yeah, I agree. Renato Nunez on FanDuel 3K would be my answer there. All right, Tigers and Twins. 4.2 run implied total for the Tigers, 5.2 for the Twins. Matt Boyd, Randy Dobnak, 40% owned Matt Boyd on DK, 19% on FanDuel. Dobnak not owned, 9,100 on DraftKings. The floor is yours on Matt Boyd. I think we've already covered this.
Yeah, I think he's going to be overowned. At least the way it looks right now, I think he's overowned as well. And I would want to get to Minnesota bats. Granted, Minnesota is getting plenty of ownership themselves. But, yeah, I mean, there's even though they're missing Garver and they're missing Donaldson, you still have Cruz and Sano as power bats from the right side, Polanco as well. And then the lefties in this lineup can hold their own too. There is a chance, though, that you get a watered-down lineup. Even more so because Kepler was injured in yesterday's game. So definitely something to keep an eye on. Minnesota, when they run out their weaker lineup, it's not a lot of power, but it does cut down on the strikeouts, which obviously would hurt Boyd a bit as well. So my interest in Minnesota kind of depends on exactly how the lineup looks. But I do think Cruz and Sano individually are really good plays. Boyd gives up power. And then Boyd, I think is fine. Obviously, would be more interested if the Twins lineup isn't its best, but I do think he's being overowned considering how potent Minnesota is offensively.
40% feels like a big number. I'm not going to disagree there, but I don't feel like it's a big number if there's two other guys right there with him. To me, I think he is the guy that should be the most owned. I'm going to dig into that one down the line because it scares the hell out of me because clearly the Twins also are a tricky spot. There's so much power in this lineup. 194 aggregate ISO is what I have it projected for today. Do you think you're coming over the field on the Twins, under the field on the Twins, just around the field on the Twins? How do you manage this Twins lineup relative to Boyd's ownership?
I think I probably end up coming in over on the Twins just because their top stack percentage isn't much lower than their aggregate ownership. But I expect to have Boyd as one of the more overowned pitchers along with Yarbrough. So I think that will drive up Minnesota for me as well.
Do you have a favorite Twins bat?
Cruz.
Yeah, Cruz definitely going to get in there in a cash lineup if you can do it. Kepler's got the lefty disadvantage. Give me Sano. 4,900 first baseman, clearly light tower power. Just 7% ownership, though. Gets the righty-lefty matchup. I think that makes for a nice pivot. Do you have a Tigers bat that you like against Randy Dobnak?
No, not really.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Do you get any shares of Dobnak?
Not at 9,100. Just doesn't have good strikeout stuff. Very good ground ball stuff. Good at getting outs, but not the stuff that really translates to a good score in DFS, especially if I'm looking to go contrarian at pitcher in that price range, I can just get a 10% on Ryu and that does it.
Sorry, working on something here. Bam, that was fun. Anyway. Oh, God, this Twins team is going to be tricky. I have a feeling that I would be under on the Twins for Matt Boyd, and that makes me feel like super gross. It's just really not appealing at all. All right, let's close this bad boy out with the game we know the least about. It looks like we might have a line finally at 5 dimes. Congrats to 5 dimes. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that on here. That was probably a mistake. Mets 5-run implied total is what I'm going with. Marlins 4. I don't see anything that's going to point me to anything else, but I'm going to go with it for right now. Sixto Sanchez appears to be pitching for the Marlins. Mets appears to be TBD as of right now. Do you have any input on who's going to be the starter for the Mets?
Nope. Haven't seen anything.
Yeah.
DraftKings has DraftKings has Robert Gsellman listed, but then the write-up just says he's a candidate to start.
Yeah. Same thing sort of says Steven Matz could be a option to start this week. So
if it's Matz, that's an interesting play.
Yeah. So talk to me about Sixto Sanchez, 6% owned right now. You mentioned a potential pay down option for you.
Yeah, I think if I have to pay down, that's where I'd go. I don't think I really need to. But through 66 pitches in his debut against Washington, went 5 innings. I would expect something in that similar range again. As far as 5 innings, if he's pitching reasonably well, he's one of their top prospects. He's coming off last year. He threw 103 innings at Double-A. struck out 23.8% of hitters, walked sub 5%. He was one of the key pieces in, I believe, the Real Muto trade. He has good stuff. And that's, I just think he has better stuff than someone like Mazza. So if I'm paying down, Mazza or even Howard, I think the matchup pretty, I guess, similar for Sanchez, but I would give him the edge over Howard if I'm paying down. But again, I just don't really think it's that necessary. You have so many cheap bats on this slate, so many cheap stacks, basically top to bottom, that you can get Scherzer plus Bassett or Scherzer plus whoever you like in that range, and still have plenty to choose from hitter wise. That I don't think Sanchez would be that useful.
We are on the same page here. Let's talk Mets bats. Any interest? They seem to be getting a little bit of love, but probably more so than I think they should. They are 5th in the top stack odds. Ownership share is essentially the same. They kind of just exist today.
I don't understand how Brandon Nimmo keeps being $3,500.
Yeah, he should be like a lot more than that.
Yeah. Conforto's too cheap also.
Agreed. So, I mean, and those are good, two guys, 15% and 15% as of right now. I think that's super reasonable. I don't mind the top end of the Mets, or like, to me, they're owned exactly where they should be. And like, I would probably get that same amount. They look like filler to me.
Yeah. It's another one of those where like, they're not projected. The Mets as a stack aren't projected to really be on their own. Sanchez isn't projected for much ownership from him. So, but just based on how I make my lineups, that basically means that I would need the Mets to project exceptionally well, because they're not getting any sort of leverage bump from anything.
Right. And then on the Marlins side, as of right now, we have no ownership going to the Mets. Whoever the Mets starter is, I don't get the sense that that's going to just like fly through the roof today either. So I have the Marlins as my number 11 stack. They are picking up a little ownership, but it's mostly just John Birdie in the leadoff spot, and then VR a little bit at the bottom half. You're going to get to any Marlins. This doesn't really seem like a fun spot to get Miami. They do come in though mid-pack for top stack odds, although they are over-owned.
Yeah, I don't really see it. Obviously we'll have a better idea once we know who's pitching for the Mets, but like if it's Mets, it's not really someone that I love picking on. If it's Giseleman, you're basically getting a bullpen game. Even if it's Mats, you might be getting a bullpen game because he hasn't pitched since the 15th. So it just doesn't seem like a particularly appealing spot.
Favorite bat, both sides of this game. Our favorite bat from the Marlins because it's obviously Nimmo.
Right. Yeah. I'll say Nimmo for both. Nimmo and then probably Aguilar.
6 up, 6 down. Let's sum it up quickly. What are you trying to do pitching and hitting for today's slate?
I'm really intrigued by Ryu's projected ownership right now. If that stays as low as it is, I think I'm going to end up getting to him. As far as bats go, I like Minnesota if Boyd's getting as much ownership as we project. I like the Orioles if Yarbrough is getting as much ownership as they project. And then I just like the A's because they're the A's.
16 minutes ago, there was a tweet that said, lineup note, Taijuan Walker and Yusei Kikuchi to start game 1 and 2 for the Mariners on Thursday. 6 minutes later, Taijuan Walker has been traded to the Blue Jays.
Oh.
Wah, wah. Not happening. Looks like the NBA players are leaving their meeting that started at 11 a.m., so we should be getting some news in that regard. So for me right now, I'll give it from a FanDuel perspective. I think the Twins and the A's are the two best possible teams to roster. That ownership is already there. So if you're trying to get away from a little bit of the ownership, the Rays are probably your best option for right now. Max Scherzer is number 1 with a bullet to me, especially on FanDuel, where we've got Scherzer at 40% ownership, Bassett, Boyd, and Yarbrough all at 20. I would just rather have 100% Max Scherzer in that scenario than try to mess it. I have Max Scherzer 14 points ahead of their next closest starter, 2.5 Ks ahead of the next closest starter. He's just not like the rest of these guys. So if you're playing on FanDuel, don't think twice. Just go to Max Scherzer.
Blue Jays trade for Taijuan Walker, one of the top rental starting pitchers on the market. How bad is the market this year?
Or how bad is the writer?
Yeah, that too.
I don't know who wrote it. I hope it's not
Don
us.
Morosi.
Okay. Just waiting to hear it. Terry McBride. What up, T McB? Guys, thank you for joining us. 295 people in here, 90 likes. I didn't bludgeon you guys with the like request, but I do have to ask that we get that into triple digits. So if you can hit the thumbs up and get us over 100, that would be great. As I mentioned, we will have MLB live before lock. If we have MLB after lock, we will have NBA live before lock today. If we have NBA at all, although I'm fully expecting to not have that happen. I'm thinking we're going to get that answer pretty soon. Golf locks in 30 something minutes, I believe. So Adam's going to go make some golf lineups. I'm going to contemplate betting him on a Matt Boyd, Chris Bassett bet or whatever the hell it was. Matt Ryu. I already forgot. The joke sucks. Adam, anything else?
The NBA players have decided to resume the playoffs.
Hey, whoa, do you mind telling us when? I assume it's tomorrow. It would shock me if they played today, but
yeah.
Well, basketball's going to be around for something, which, look, I expected. That's a lot of money. Money talks. Guys, thanks for joining us. Thank you for taking me over 100 likes. Best of luck on this MLB slate. Jordan Klein, play that lovely music.